We welcome now Caroline Sunshine, Deputy Communications Director for the Trump campaign. Caroline, great to have you. We'll dive right in here. We've got a lot to cover. The news is moving so fast these days. So we heard the former president say he would welcome and be honored by RFK Jr.'s endorsement. We heard his comments just moments ago. While you could make the argument he didn't get that endorsement outright today, with RFK staying on the ballots in some states, we did hear RFK Jr. make a lot of the same arguments former President Trump has made about the media, about the switching of candidates on the Democratic side. How powerful do you believe those comments are for the Trump campaign when you talk about fundraising, you talk about votes, and have you heard any further reaction from the president?
Absolutely. Well, I can tell you President Trump has built an extraordinary political movement that is well equipped to make this country great again. You saw just this past summer, he obviously unified the Republican Party behind him in Milwaukee. And ever since, we have seen more disaffected Democrats and independent voters continue to come over to President Trump and his movement. President Trump is just an extremely unique political force, and his message is resonating across our country, across battleground states, with people who are very much like RFK. And so we are excited. I encourage everybody to tune in. I won't get ahead of the president, but I will say after RFK Jr.'s comments earlier today, my personal text message and inbox has been flooded with supporters saying that they couldn't be prouder to want to throw their support by President Trump. They want to be all in. They are very much, they're fed up. There's no middle ground for them anymore. President Trump is their guy, and they're all in. And my phone is quite literally blowing up with text messages like that from people that I didn't even know about. And I expect we're going to continue to see more of that.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens in those all-important swing states and with those independent and undecided voters. There is reporting out now, Caroline, that multiple U.S. Secret Service agents, they've been placed on leave. We've covered the story earlier in the show following that assassination attempt on the former president last month. What's been the campaign's reaction to that move overall?
Well, as far as the investigation goes, I would, of course, refer to the United States Secret Service, and we're going to let that play out. But President Trump continues to be extremely grateful for the men and women of the Secret Service that protect him on the road. It's their job to continue to protect him, whether it's an indoor rally, an outdoor rally, any of the venue sites that you have seen. You know, President Trump just this week alone was in battleground states everywhere from Michigan to North Carolina to the U.S.-Mexico border to Arizona again today, yesterday, and then again today. And this is a man who, you know, after surviving the assassination attempt on his life, got to his feet and said, fight, 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 hasn't stopped fighting since. We're very grateful to the men and women of the Secret Service to enable that to continue to happen. And I expect President Trump to continue full speed ahead, rain or shine, as we let that investigation play out. And President Trump, meanwhile, continues to bring his winning message all across this country.
And some were surprised at how quickly he hit the campaign trail publicly after that assassination attempt. Do you believe, Caroline, that he feels safe as he continues to hold these larger rallies outdoors?
Absolutely. President Trump is the great American warrior. He shows no fear, whether that's taking questions from the press, putting himself into hostile media environments, or just continuing his movement to fight to make this country great again. This is a man who was back on his feet seconds after an assassin's bullet came within a millimeter of his life. And again, we're able to do that because of the terrific men of the United States Secret Service who continue to work with us to keep President Trump safe. President Trump, as I said, is completely fearless. And as you have seen, if you build it, they will come. We continue to see record crowds in these battleground states, people from all stars and stripes, from different political orientations, as some who are similar to RFK, some who are different, continuing to show up, because what they realize is that the Democrat Party, especially as evidenced at the Democratic National Convention this past week, doesn't have a vision to offer Americans. It doesn't have a vision that is grounded in reality, doesn't have anything to offer them to address their problems. Meanwhile, on every issue, whether it's the economy, inflation, immigration, crime, all those issues that are most important to the American people, as you see, President Trump is most trusted on those issues. He beats Kamala Harris in the polls on those issues by a pretty wide margin, and I expect to continue to see that to happen as President Trump continues to bring his winning message to every corner of this country.
We only have about a minute left, but I want to get this question in because I think it's incredibly important as we look ahead to these all-important debates. There are some political analysts who say if these upcoming debates focus on substance and issues, the Trump campaign has a better chance of winning independent and undecided voters. If it's riddled with name-calling, unrelated tangents, it'll do more to turn those voters off. Is the president taking that analysis into consideration as he prepares to face Harris in this debate forum?
It's policy and persona. President Trump is who he is. Our voters love that he is the same person, no matter what stage or city or format he is in front of. I can't say the same for Kamala Harris, who proves to be a typical career politician, chameleon, who really seems to augment many aspects of both her personality and her somewhat non-existent policy.
Thanks so much for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.